Hello everyone and welcome back to Project Art Live. My name's Mr. Connor. I am one of the three resident artists for Pittsburgh Project Art. And last week I led you through a lesson regarding line and color as being tools by which we can express how we feel and share those feelings with other people. At the same time, while just letting the pen guide us, the colors splash on the page, we also come to better understand ourselves and how we feel on a given day, and also to chart maybe some of our emotional development over time. So, art really is a tool, it's a powerful vehicle by which we can interact with ourselves and the world. So, I hope you really got a kick out of last week. I did, and I got to draw a little bit more this past week, but today we're going to do something else. What I like to call it's the task of the visual artist. I like to call it the art of seeing. For a lot of the mural jobs that I'll do, which are large scale paintings outside, for corporate or commercial clients, or even with schools and students like yourself, my task is often to take what we talk about in a classroom or in a meeting and turn it into a vision. So to visualize what it is that we're talking about and create a picture that can be painted on a wall in a big way, right? So that's what I like to call the art of seeing. Now, there are three different ways to see. And before we get into that, go ahead and get yourself a piece of paper and a pencil, a pen, a marker, some pastels, whatever it is that you have available to you and like to draw with. Go ahead and get those things and get settled. And I'm also going to be sharing my iPad screen like I did last week so you can see exactly what it is that I'm working with. So I'll do that now. We'll get A and B. There we go. All right. So, the art of seeing. Now, I'll write it down just so you can see. You can also take notes if you'd like. There are three different kinds of seeing, different ways of seeing that I like to think about as being part of the artist's job. So the first is in looking, right? And that's in looking around your environment, seeing what's there, noticing all the different colors, the different shapes, the shades, where the light is coming from. So why don't we do that? Let's just take a minute to look around our environment. Wherever it is that you're streaming this video, just look around and notice some of the different visual characteristics of the space you're in. For example, I have one light bulb right here in front of me, which is casting light in a really interesting way. There's windows here, so light's coming in from the outside, so there's different colors of light, right? Different textures. There's some plants in here, and they all have different leaves, so they all look quite differently. Right, so I see these things, and that's my job, right? I'm taking in my environment. I'm looking around. I'm using my eyes to create an image, right? That really, an image is being imprinted on my mind with the use of my eyes. Now, that's called looking. The second type of seeing, and we're going to practice these in a second. The second type of seeing is what I like to call remembering. So remembering is basically what we just did, right? We looked around the room, and now you can close your eyes and kind of remember some of the things that you saw. So join me in closing your eyes and taking a second to think about what it was that you noticed. Right, like I said, I noticed, particularly in my environment, the different colors of light, where they're coming from. I remember this big plant right here to my left with a very distinct texture in its leaves, and how that looked different than this plant that's right in front of me. Noticing the desk that I'm working on, right? So that's remembering. You can open your eyes. That's remembering. It's basically taking a picture with your eyes while you're looking around and recalling it to mind, recalling it to your mind's eye so you can see it again. And that leads us to the third way of seeing, which is what I'd call imagining. So imagining it's a little bit different than remembering, but it relies on the first two ways of seeing. So when I imagine something, I'll close my eyes and conjure a vision, and it often has to do with an idea. So a conversation that I'm having with the students or with whomever I'm working with, and I can start to kind of piece things together and see things. And that takes a lot of practice. It's not an easy thing to do, but it takes a lot of time also just looking and intentionally trying to remember as well. So the more you spend time observing your environment and drawing the things around you, and also trying to remember and draw without looking at things. Nowadays it's very easy, right? We look pictures up on the internet, everything's right there, and then we can just draw whatever we'd like based on what we see on the internet. And I think that that actually does a disservice to the power of the artist to create a vision with their own self, right? Just from within, not relying on any external prompt, but just really focusing on and honing your power of seeing the space around you. So what we're going to do today is just take a little practice. So what I'd like you to do, we're going to try first looking. So what I'd like you to do is find an object in your space. For me, I've already grabbed this plant, which is right in front of me. Here, I'll hold it up so you can get a look. It's got 5 individual little sprouts coming up. It may be part of the same plant. They might have the same root structure, like a rhizome. They grow individually, but they're connected under the soil with their roots. I'm not entirely sure what kind of plant it is either, but it's a nice little plant. So I think I'm going to draw that. So I grabbed it, and I'm going to place it in a certain way with this light so that I can see it in an interesting way. And just take a moment to look at it. So do the same in your environment. Go grab something. It could be something that you're just seeing right from your desk or wherever it is that you're sitting. And just take a minute to note all its different characteristics. Okay? And then what I'd like you to do is take your pencil, your pen, or whatever it is that you have, and let's start working with the paper. So I'm going to use a little pencil tool, and hopefully you can see it via my iPad here. In fact, I can get rid of my own face. Which might make it a little bit easier to focus. Okay, so here we are. First, I'm just going to do a really loose structure of whatever it is I'm looking at, right, with the angle. So there's this kind of ovular opening of the, there's the place where the vessel opens, which is where I'm just going to start, right, kind of loosely creating a circle. And so what you want to do here, because you're not going to be drawing the same plant I am, it's just to notice some of the shapes that are kind of included in the object you're working with. So there's an oval on the top, but then that connects down below, and I'm keeping the same angle, right, the same kind of curvature between top and bottom to create the vase. But in the middle is kind of a rectangle, right? There's this, it's a quadrilateral, it has 4 sides, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And if I was looking at it square on, it would be a rectangle, but because I'm looking at it from the top, it has this kind of circular shape. So whatever it is that you're looking at, just notice the shapes that are involved and just kind of work out their proportions. So after you draw one thing, just kind of working to add more lines to continue to build out that image based on what it is that you've already drawn. So I'm going to add some soil here. And then we'll get into the leaves. So it doesn't have to be perfect. We're just going to spend a few minutes here doing this just as practice, really. So I'm just throwing in some of the lines here for the leaves. And again, I'm looking at the other leaves that I've already drawn to make sure that there's some proportionality, that things are kind of fitting together the way that they actually are in real life, whatever I'm looking at. And some stems. So this is a great activity to take into a park, or it's a little cold right now as it's winter, but just to get outside. You can even just do it really quickly, even with gloves on, It's really more about the act of seeing and trying to translate that to the paper than it is whatever it is that you're actually drawing. So I've always encouraged people, my students, not to worry about what it is what it looks like exactly. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it's just practice, right? Practice makes perfect. And if that's what you want to get out of art, if you want to be able to draw things exactly as you see them, then this is really a crucial tool, being able to draw what it is that you see. And I'm not really even the best at it. There are people who can draw pictures perfectly, almost like a camera would capture things. But that's not really the kind of art that I'm interested in, right? So I've also had to figure that out over the years. I'm going to add some shading here. This vessel has some kind of it looks like it was handmade, so there's some strokes in it, different shapes, and I have an erase tool here that I'm using. But again, it doesn't have to be perfect. Even if you're working with pen and you can't erase, that's actually very liberating. It's freeing to not be able to erase anything, because then you kind of just have to commit and just work with whatever's there. If you're trying to make it perfect, you'll never really make those first steps. You have to let it be, as it comes out. So I'm going to keep spending some time here. There's some shadows inside. Right. Of course, the dirt. Remember last week we were talking about lines, so maybe I'll throw in some different lines in the dirt to create some different texture, right? So it looks different than the outside of the bowl, which is looking smoother. I'm going to throw some lines in here just like this to create some texture. Now, of course, I'm going to come back in and tighten these lines up too with the leaves. I'll make them darker than they actually are, just so we can see what it is that we're working with. And same here. So you can see how I kind of started with a very skeletal drawing, right? Just like with the bones, so to speak, of whatever it is I was looking at. And now as I become a little bit more confident about what I'm looking at and how I'm seeing it, I can commit to making bolder lines, bolder marks, bolder being thicker, darker, more easily read, and kind of committing to what it is I've already drawn, right? So you can kind of see it starting to come together. Now in here, this is all really quite shady as well, this whole section. Soil. I'm just going to add some shade in there. There's really one leaf, one stem back here that I missed. And again, pen, last week we talked a little bit about hatching. If you're going to shade things with a pen, you can make lines like this, right, one way, and then throw some extra lines in there at another angle, and it gets progressively darker, right? That's called hatching. You change the angle of a line, and you add more lines, and it just gets darker and darker as it overlaps. But here, I'm just because I have this pencil tool, I'm just working with what's there, right? So, and again, not really worrying about it, just working with light and dark. Throwing things on there. Not worrying too much. And we'll just spend a couple more minutes here just practicing. And I also encourage you not to start over. You might think that something doesn't look good, but just keep working with it. This isn't the best drawing I've ever made, but I'm not worried about it. Can't be a perfectionist. I mean, you can, of course, but you have to also just try. Like they say, you have to jump in to swim. So the nice thing about pencils, of course, is that I make a dark line up there, right? And then I can come in with an eraser and actually make some highlights that make something jump out. That was too far. But anyways, here, go back to the leaves up here. Maybe I'll do some lines too on the leaves just to create some direction. And so it's a simple picture, simple enough. And it's not perfect. But if I were to spend, another hour on this particular drawing, I could make it pretty well, right? I could start to really hash out the different forms. I could, just continue to work it, not give up. It's really a super important lesson also that art teaches us is that, if I make a quick drawing, it might look like nothing. Of course, most likely it will look like nothing unless I was a true master, Picasso who can render something from a single stroke. But otherwise, you have an image. Even he would start a painting and have a base painting, and then work with what's there and experiment and continue to try, and just with trial and error, see how things look relative to everything else in the picture. So that's what we call looking, right? That is one method of seeing. So if I was to continue, I'd keep drawing some more texture in the leaves, trying to distinguish some of the shadows. It's darker up there, a little bit darker on this side, right, etc., etc. Now, if I'm going to switch, and let's talk about, so here I'll zoom in a little bit for you can see. The next way of seeing, of course, is what I said, remembering. So what I'd like to do next is, maybe next to this drawing on the picture, on your paper, or on the back side, I'd like you to start working on just remembering. I'm going to get there myself. It's hard to put it down, right? It's hard once you start drawing to stop. At least it is for me. But because I have the luxury of this app where I can just create new layers, I'm going to do that, so I actually can't even see what I've already drawn. You can have it on there on your paper if you feel like you need a guide when we get into this act of remembering. And what's nice about remembering is that there's really no pressure, right? You can't be a perfectionist because whatever it is that you've drawn prior or have been looking at, you're going to put away. You're not going to look at it. You're not going to think about it. You're just going to try and see it in your mind's eye. And what that actually allows is a great deal of freedom. So I might even embellish this drawing to have totally different features than I remember. But I'm going to start with some of the basics. So like I did before, right, I'm going to draw just the basic shapes that are involved in the drawing. And here I can work even faster, right? There's a lip here in this vessel. I can work even faster here potentially because I'm not there's a lot of complexity in looking at anything, right? Lots of different angles, lots of different, and here I'm just going to kind of go more simply. So maybe some simpler shapes. I knew that there were 5 leaves, so I'm just going to draw 5 leaves, right? There's one coming this way, one going out there, and a dip in it like that, and where's the 5th? So here, I can just change it up a little bit, and I'm remembering, but it has the same idea, right? And it brings us a little bit closer to the third way of seeing too, which is choosing intentionally what it is that you're drawing, and making those intentional choices all mean something, right? Just like last week we were talking about the choices we make with the colors we choose, creating a different emotional energy in the picture. So too with the lines, right? If I use different lines, say I use a really jagged line, it has a different energy than if the lines I use to draw a picture are all smooth. Or say if all the lines I use are vertical, meaning they go up and down, that'll make a different picture than if I draw something. I mean, I could draw the exact same item. Say it's this plant, I could draw it all with vertical lines, or I could draw it all with horizontal lines, and it would have a different effect on whoever's looking at it. So you start to make intentional choices with a little bit more freedom too. So it's not being totally attached to whatever it is you're seeing, but trying to bring out the essence of that thing as you see it. So I'm going to see how much faster that was. I mean, I've already got my leaves drawn out. I haven't added any shading, but I know the light's coming from this side, so I'll shade it like that again. And maybe I can have a little bit more fun with it and give it some stripes. Or you know what? I'll do it this way. Here. So the stripes too should kind of follow that top line, the curvature of the bowl. Right, so it's square. And then it'll look a little bit more natural. Get rid of some of that. And I'll bring in the eraser over here. So here already, I'm just kind of throwing in some details. So whatever it was that you were drawing before, start with the skeleton, like we talked about, and then just kind of, just draw it. Doesn't have to be like anything perfect. Just draw whatever's there in your mind. So I know there was some shadow over here from one of the leaves, and it kicks up in the bowl. Notice too, last week we talked a lot about how it feels to draw a picture, how it feels to make certain lines. Now, notice here how it feels to have drawn something while looking at it, and how it feels to just draw something from your mind and just let yourself kind of fill in all the details. To me, it's much more enjoyable. I like drawing things that I see. Again, it's really challenging, right? And maybe that's why I don't like it as much. It's because it's more difficult. But that's why both exercises have their place, right? It's worth also just letting yourself kind of express whatever it is you have in your mind and not worry too much about what it looks like. So here I'm going to shade the leaves differently than I did before. I'm going to use the side of my pencil to get some broader strokes. And just working it in. There's some shade down here too. Just adding extra details, right? So you start somewhere, and then you look at your picture. Make sure you take a moment to look at the whole picture, take a step back, see what it is that you're working with, and see if it makes any sense, right? So, and then just keep adding details to kind of bring out whatever's there, whatever image is already there, just kind of working to bring it out with some extra details. And now, so I'm getting finer and finer as I work, right? Before I was making quick, big strokes. Now I'm making little, they're also kind of quick strokes. because I'm not really worried about it, right? Again, just letting it flow. Okay. So voila, there it is. Now let's see, I'm going to move this over a little bit and bring up the other layer too, and we'll see what they both look like. This is a little smaller. We spent a little bit more time on the first image too, but there you have it. So the image from my brain is on the right and the image from real life is on the left. And they do have a different feel, right? I mean, the one on the right is maybe a little bit more idealistic. It's certainly a little bit simpler, the way the leaves are all separate from each other. Whereas the one on the left, the leaves are interacting, and you can tell, I'm paying a little bit more attention. It looks a little bit more like a real plant and less like a cartoon. But both are unique, and both are pretty interesting looking for their own right. So those are the first two methods of seeing that we're going to talk about today. Now, the third is probably the most fun. So the third, let's get me back up here. The third is what I called originally imagining, right? And so what that actually looks like and how we're going to practice it today is what I like to call a little bit of guided meditation. So what we're going to do is take a break. You can put your pencils down, kind of, stretch out your head, your neck. Take some deep breaths. If you want to get out of your chair and wiggle around, shake it all out, go ahead and do that. I really think that drawing and working with your body go hand in hand. A lot of that motion, the emotion kind of comes all the way, or think about it, right? The impulse to draw comes all the way from your brain through your central nervous system into your arm, into your fingers, these tiny little strokes you're making. And it can be you can be pent up, particularly if you're drawing with the first method of seeing, which is looking. You're looking at something. You can really almost just focus and get so tight and close that you're all scrunched up and you're holding tension. And it's not that free movement, those free strokes that kind of give things a little bit more energy in life. So it's important to get up and stretch. So go ahead and do that. Spend a couple seconds taking some deep breaths. And like I said, it's a guided meditation, so we're going to start basically just with that. So if you will, get out a new piece of paper. And here we're going to use some color too. I think I'm going to stick just a pencil for time being, because we don't have that much time. And what we're going to do is take a little journey in the forest. Okay? So if everybody's seated again, sitting down in your chairs, we're going to start just with closing our eyes. Okay? I'm going to share my iPad like I did before. And we're going to close our eyes and just take a deep breath in. I'm going to take 3 deep breaths, okay? Ready, set. And just not thinking about anything. And keeping your eyes closed, I want you to imagine that you're sitting on the ground in the middle of a forest. You can feel the leaves underneath you. You can hear the trees rustling. And without opening your eyes, I want you to look around. Inside, you can turn your head as if you're actually looking. Again, your eyes are closed, but you're looking around at all the different trees. I want you to see the trees. How do they stand? Are they tall? Are they short? Do they go straight up into the sky, or do they wiggle around and have lots of different contours? What color are they? What shape are the leaves? Are they leaves at all? Maybe it's feathers. Maybe it's a feather tree. Take a moment to see one tree in particular, its whole shape from top to bottom. Starting at the bottom where the tree meets the soil. Notice the soil, what color is the ground. Notice the bark. Notice as the tree grows up, its shape, how it splits into its individual branches. And then noticing also the leaves, right, and the whole shape of the canopy of the tree, the top of the tree. Now quickly, before you forget what you saw, I want you to draw it, okay? And so what we're going to do is start on the bottom left part of your paper. I'm going to zoom in so that I can get some detail. But starting at the bottom left of your paper, I want you to draw a tree. Now it's difficult, right? To try and draw exactly what you saw. You may have seen nothing yet, but this is basically like remembering, but with imagination, right? The third way of seeing is to just imagine. And like we talked about last week, a good way to start with that is to kind of let the pencil guide you, right? I'm just going to kind of make some strokes based on what I saw, right? I saw a tree that grew up. Whoops. I saw a tree that grew up, and it also had these kind of fans, right? It like the roots grew out and became wide at the bottom. There's some big branches, 4 branches. It's not gonna be perfect. I'm just working with what you got. Go ahead and try. Just keep trying. And don't worry too much. And so my tree's kind of typical looking, but maybe yours is different, right? In fact, my tree was it was really a wet ground. It wasn't totally water, but it was pretty muddy. And in fact, I was actually just in Georgia, or in South Carolina. I saw this. I went to a national park called Congaree, where the trees grow straight out of the water. So maybe that's where I'm getting some of my inspiration, right? And with that, again, it's remembering. A lot of these images that we have in our brain come from somewhere. Whether or not we're actually imagining them, maybe they came in a dream, maybe they came from another lifetime and we just don't remember having seen them. So you have to trust your vision. Just trust whatever comes out, and also trust whatever comes out of the pencil, right? That was part of the lesson last week, was whatever comes out of the pencil, you just have to deal with it. And part of that is, the color, the line. It's all significant because it's all part of you. So just trusting what's there, not being too fastidious, and just working with what you've got. So my tree is pretty typical, right? It looks like it has some leaves. What do your trees look like? Wish I could see. All right. So I'm not going to put too much time into it. We're going to spend just a few minutes with each of these stages. What you could also do is draw yourself down here. So we were looking up at this tree. So I'm going to draw a little guy, sit here, in seated meditation of sorts. Just got my hands right there, and right. Making strokes, just keep working. Just don't even worry about what it looks like. Just let it come out. little guy down here, right? He's got some feet. And he's also kind of floating in whatever this muck was, this ground. Now, of course, if you're working with markers, you want to just put down some color and then progressively work to layer. So maybe I'll transition to color here as we move forward with the exercise. If I was to do it here, I'll do it anyway. Markers are kind of transparent, so they're easier to draw with, but I like to put down the color first and then come in with the black line, which is the boldest, right? It's the darkest, and basically give it some final detail. So I'm just gonna, that's not really the green I saw darker green. So I'm just gonna add some color like that, right? And so my black lines are still there because the marker is relatively transparent. But generally, if you're working with a marker in real life on paper, you want to start with your color. Same with watercolor, or and then get progressively darker, add more detail. And then you can also add some highlights, right? Come back in with other colors. That's if you're working with paint. Markers kind of just get progressively darker, right? If you mix all the colors together, as Nathan was talking about, it just becomes brown or black. So you have to be intentional, right? So adding a little bit more detail in my tree here, color-wise. And I might make it smaller so that I can have more of a picture. So again, we're starting in the bottom left, right? All right, that looks okay for now. Maybe I'll add some blue down below. We'll make the ground totally water. I'm just basically levitating there on top of some water, which is cool. Don't forget to color in your trunk of your tree. I'm going to give mine kind of a funky orangish color. It's a brown really, but it's got kind of a beige quality. And markers layer, right? If you add another stroke on top because of their transparency, it gets progressively darker the more ink you put down. So you can kind of add some extra detail as you continue to work with it. And you can come back later too to this picture. The important part today is just the act of seeing. So I'm going to shrink this, which you can't do, of course, but we're just going to keep working. So next up, I'd like you to put your pencils down. Okay, putting your pencils down. Take another deep breath. Let's close our eyes. Okay. And now we're back at the base of our tree, sitting in the forest. It's a little bit easier to see now that you've drawn it, right? You can remember what it is that you've just drawn and be there. Can you see it so well that you can actually even hear its leaves rustling? Can you smell it? Okay, taking one last look, we're going to stand up, not actually, keeping our eyes closed. In our mind's eye, we're going to stand up and we're going to walk past the tree. And walking through the trees, there's many trees. There's a little path that wanders through them, and finally we emerge from this forest. And all of a sudden we see, what do we see in front of us? Rolling hills, rocky terrain. Are we on a cloud? What does it look like? What does it look like? You see your path continuing to carve through the landscape. But you take a second to look at all the detail of whatever it is in front of you. Maybe it's a big thing of cotton candy. What is it exactly? Take a look, see some of the hills, imagine what it looks like. And now looking down at your feet, again with your eyes closed, examine the path that you're walking on. What's the path made of? What's the path made of? Okay, now, coming back, open your eyes, and before you forget what it is that you've seen, let's draw it. So, picking up your trusty tools, go ahead and draw what it is you've seen. So I'm going to add just a couple, I'm going to add some bigger strokes back here, just to represent that this was a forest, that we were kind of walking through. And I'll show you what I meant about the layering here too. So I'm making some strokes, right? And I'm going to come in with my pencil. But work on whatever it is that you saw, right? So don't worry too much about what I'm doing. Just get those details down on the paper. So what we're drawing is, again, the landscape that we've seen and what it's made of. And then also we're going to be drawing, we're going to draw the path that we're walking on and what that's made of, what it looks like. Maybe it's a stone path. Maybe it's made of turtle shell. Maybe it's marble. It can be all sorts of things. Whatever it is that came to you when you had your eyes closed. And if you still haven't seen anything, if you're not able to actively imagine it, then go ahead and just draw whatever it is that you'd like to draw, right? I mean, that's part of it. It's whatever's coming to mind. It's letting the pencil guide you. All right. Throw down some of this. All right, so here we are in this forest. And the path carries out. My path, the one that I saw in my mind, was water, interestingly enough. So this terrain that I'd seen before carries on, kind of emerges through into, so moving from the left side of the page, right, we're going towards the center now, and drawing the path that you've seen. And then I'm going to turn to my landscape. And what I saw there was some clouds. That's not. I'll choose a more of a lavender here. I'm just kind of imagining some of the textures here. My path goes into the clouds. It circles around. These clouds are dense, right? They're thick. Okay. So once you get that down, just some of the basics, we're going to spend a couple minutes. Gotta keep an eye on the time. Okay. And like I said, so usually I start with some color, right? And then maybe I'll come in with a pencil to add some of that extra detail. Right? Some of the, just some black lines so I know super bold. It's not very. So how do you walk on a path made of water? I'm not sure. Maybe it's a shallow creek.
maybe I can float on water. But that's the thing, is that it's all imaginary, right? It doesn't have to be like it's scientifically shown that it's possible. Just whatever comes out. So I'm thinking about the texture of clouds, right, as I'm making these shapes, making these strokes. They really can almost take on any shape, right, because it's like water. I mean, clouds are water in the sky, and it depends on the quality of wind and whatnot, air pressure, etc. But it's almost like this is like a bubble bath. The water is actually flowing into the cloud, maybe under it, and it's taking on this very puffy shape. So I'm making strokes that just accentuate that, right? And on top of that little bit of color, it helps bring it out. Now, obviously, that tree needs a little bit more work, but we're not going to bother with that right now. We're just going to let it be. And come back later. Okay. So, there our path is. It's going through our landscape. And we're going to put our pencils back down. Take another deep breath. And close our eyes. Okay. So, remember where you were. You're standing on your path, the landscape in front of you. Now that you've drawn it, again, it might be a little bit clearer what it is you're imagining. And we start to walk forward, up the path, through the landscape. Walking and walking. Walking along. Until eventually the landscape begins to clear, it begins to smooth out, disappear, and we end up face to face with a river. A big river. And it's rapid, it's rushing. And you're not really even sure what it's made of. You get closer and you start to see the color. What color is the river? And what is the river made of? You scoop down and maybe you scoop some of it up with your hand to examine it more closely, whatever's flowing there in that river. Or maybe you don't. Maybe you don't want to get too close. You take a good look at it. You take a deep breath in. Smell it. Smell the air. What is that? And you realize that there's no way to cross this river, at least that you see, until you're looking around and you see to your left a big bridge. A very interesting bridge. And what does that bridge look like? What's it made of? You're looking at it from below, and you see that your path actually curves around to meet that bridge, and it looks like, you're on this path, and it's almost like you're supposed to cross that bridge. So, taking a good look again at the whole scene, taking a look at the river, taking a look at the bridge, and now opening your eyes and coming back into the room, we're going to draw what you saw, right? I'm going to draw what you saw. And I should also mention, if you ever finish before we go back to our vision, finish drawing, go ahead and add some extra detail to the parts that are already there, right? So I wonder if that works on this. Here. All right, so what I saw personally was a big river of fire. It was really pretty, it was raging, right? wraps around here, tucks in under the clouds. That's what I had seen. A big river of fire. Whoops. A bit too close. And maybe the bridge is back here at a distance, so we can't see in my drawing exactly where the path goes, but that's okay. I'm going to focus on the fire for now. I'm going to keep my color, switch tools. So experiment too, right, with whatever tools you have. Maybe you have crayons and watercolor. Maybe you have pencil and marker, colored pencils and markers. But experiment with how, when you change whatever it is that you're working with, how the different tools layer, what different textures you can create with different tools. So I'm here adding this detail here to this fire. I've zoomed in so you can see. Right, so I'm kind of following, as opposed to the clouds, which have a different texture, right? I'm kind of making these more sweeping strokes with my pencil. To emulate the way that fire looks. It's really energy, it's really intense, right? Fire is bold and bright. Drawing your river. Maybe your river was made out of chocolate, like the one in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Big chocolate river. That'd be nice. So, oops. Just adding some details and colors, right? Again, working with whatever it is that comes out of your brain, just putting it there on the paper. And trying just to capture the texture of whatever it is that you're drawing. So what would chocolate look like? If it was a chocolate river, would it be goopy? Would it be smooth? Would it be like big hunks of chocolate floating down, almost like a frozen glacial river with big hunks of ice in it? Or what would that look like? So, kind of finished some of my fire. You can see here. Looks all right, right? It looks different than the cloud. Looks different than the tree. Anywho, I'm going to draw my bridge now here in the background. Check the time again. Got about 15 minutes. Oh no, we only have 7 minutes. So I'm gonna try and squeeze this all in. So I'll just draw a simple bridge here. Maybe it emerges from behind the clouds. That's where the path goes. It gets progressively smaller as it goes away. It's kind of a big bridge for how small that river is, but maybe we'll get rid of half of it. So bridge comes over here, maybe it's high up so you don't get burnt by the flames. And maybe it's meeting over here what's actually like a cliff of stone. I didn't ask you to imagine that yet, but you can just draw it, right? Whatever it is that you're crossing over to, it would make sense if it's the landscape that was there before. But for the sake of this drawing, I'm just going to throw something in there. So stone, obviously, too, looks different than fire, right? It looks different than trees, it looks different than clouds, has a different texture. So I try and draw things that are a little bit more square, maybe, for stone. But that actually does work with where we're going. So we're going to finish this up here real quick. And draw some suspension on the bridge. Right, okay. Now you can kind of see maybe what's over there. Maybe there's more. Yeah, we'll come back. All right, so closing your eyes, putting your pencil down. This is the last time, okay? We're going to finish it up here now. So now we're standing on the front of our bridge, right? We've yet to cross. We're looking down at the river, seeing it. And we're walking across the bridge. Whew, thank goodness we don't have to try and swim through our river, whatever it's made out of. And we're walking. And as we're walking, we see on the far side of the bridge something emerging in the distance. It's massive. It's getting bigger and bigger. And it was at first maybe enshrouded in some fog or clouds, but now it's becoming increasingly clear and bigger and bigger. Every step you take, it's growing in size. And finally, when you get out of the bridge, out from underneath the suspension, you look up and see that it's a massive thing. What is it? It's bigger than anything you've ever seen. What is it? It's huge. It stretches up all the way into the sky. What is that thing? As you walk closer, it's still getting bigger and bigger. And the path continues through the landscape. It's the same landscape it was before, now. You're getting closer though, it's changing, the texture of the ground is changing, and it's starting to again turn into this thing, whatever it is that you're looking at. It's massive, it's so big. And you're getting closer, and take a good look at whatever it is, right? What is that thing up there for you? Maybe it's something you've seen before, maybe it's unlike anything you've ever seen. Maybe it's alive, maybe it's sleeping. I mean, it's so massive. Doesn't seem to be moving in my mind, but maybe in yours it is. All right, now we're going to open our eyes, and before we forget, we're going to draw it really quickly, okay? We're going to draw it real quick. I'm going to take this whole image and make it a little bit bigger, because I can do that on this iPad. So there we are, half the page. I'm going to go up here, right, top right corner of the paper, and draw what it is that I saw. We didn't have a lot of time, but just start somewhere with whatever it is that you'd like to basically see over there. I saw this huge dinosaur, almost like Reptar from the Rugrats, if you remember that. So I'm just going to draw this big green thing up here with maybe it has a yellow belly, so I'll leave some space for that. And it's got a tail back here and some legs, right? And it's maybe the keeper of this, it's what I saw. I guess I like it. I don't know. I could change it. That's the benefit of starting here. Maybe I will change it. I'm going to do something else. I'm going to just draw what I could have seen. Just a different version of a big dragon, basically. I mean, a big dinosaur is the big dragon. Maybe that's where this fire river came from, right? Right. So I'm also taking care here with this tool not to overlap, because then it would change the color. So with markers too, whenever you're drawing in person, you have to make quick strokes, right? Otherwise the color starts to layer and it looks different. So here, like that, right? But then you can use that marker again to create definition, like so. So make it three-dimensional. Right. So whatever it is that you draw, maybe it was a big mountain. Usually, whenever I do this, it's a mountain. But this time I thought I'd switch it up and do something funky. We only have a couple minutes left anyway. In fact, that is an hour. So what I'd like you to do is basically just finish this drawing up on your own. We ran over time a little bit, but those to me are the three different types of seeing. So it's pretty cool, right? You can base what you're drawing, what you're working on the things that you've seen before, and kind of just inspire yourself to take a journey. And what I like to say also to my students while we're doing this kind of project is that, if you ever are in a tough place or say, you're feeling alone or feeling like you don't have anywhere to go or people to talk to, this is a good time to basically create some space for yourself by just envisioning something, right? To make something up as it comes out and just have it be this private little space that you can revisit, like this land where there are all sorts of beasts and creatures and things that are that only you can see. It's really a power to be able to see, to have this idea of vision, right? Different kinds of sight that belong really to the visual artist. So I hope you've enjoyed this little exercise. Again, my name is Mr. Connor. If you have any questions, you can reach out to Project Art. But it was really a pleasure for me just to have a little bit of fun, to let myself relax and make some art. And I hope that it was fun for you too. So keep on drawing and have a good one.